a bulldozer going through town. We had a lot of people show up to that hearing. We had to move it from City Hall over to the high school auditorium, all in one shot, because there were 500 folks that showed up. That might be a little edgy. You might not want to do that. There's a lot of ways to get that outreach now, though, right? A lot of ways to contact. I'm going to do the North Ogden one just because I've just barely been through 2 open houses last week. We led up to that with 2 surveys, okay? One about a downtown idea and one about the overall city, all right? We sent those out on utility bills in paper, which is a real pain these days, and then we also did it online with these same kind of surveys, all right? We sent flyers to all the businesses. We had a steering committee, okay, that actually took flyers to all the elementary schools, and then the elementary schools took the flyers home. Let me think, what else? Oh, we put up poster boards with questions and things at the 2 grocery stores, all right, in town. Next, we had those little A-frame signs on the big corners. Okay. So how'd it go? Well, we had, as of yesterday, 281 folks that responded to the online survey, 160 that did the utility bill one. Oh, let me add one more thing. We had incentives to do that. Okay, like you get to go to the recreation center for free for a month, or your utility bill gets waived for a month. So we had a lot of people actually respond that way. And then at the open houses, we had 60 on a Tuesday night and about 140 on a Saturday. Trying some different things. But you can do that outreach. Will that have gotten to all the people? The answer still is no. Did we have one person yell at me for an hour on Saturday? Yes. Even though they got the notice, they were still mad about it. Okay. So.
People in your city you're talking about 17.
What's that?
How big a town city?
That one's about 17,000.
That's a great response.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You know, and I'm see this stuff. I'm not the online survey guy in our team, okay? But it really worked out well. It's a lot of work, but worked out well. So there are ways to get at that. Maybe a little edgy thing here and there. Maybe not the bulldozer, but maybe something else like, you know, we either have more commercial business or taxes are going up. Hey, how about that? Is that going to get a few people out? It does. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about zoning for a minute. Is zoning the only tool for implementing your plan? Is that it? That's all there is out there? What do you think? Maybe not? Probably not. Okay, but it's one of the big ones. And the zoning's really interesting. You know, for me anyway. Maybe it's because it's been my career, but communities have approached the zoning in so many different ways. Some say things like, you know, that's the zoning we had in 1950. It's fine. We're never going to change that. It stays that way. Everybody has that property right to that zoning, and that's done. That's it. Things change, though. But if you're in Salt Lake County, you know, we'll talk about all that township stuff. Getting a zone text change, changing something in a zone, is unbelievably difficult. You have to have all those different township planning commissions agree, okay, to make a recommendation. Plus, below that, they've actually got community councils, too, that have to make a recommendation. And then it goes to the planning commission, the general planning commission, and then up to the county council. It's kind of like, you know, something that takes a year and a half to do one little thing every single time. Very intimidating process for updating your zoning. But this part here, the point for me is, when was the last time you looked at your zoning and said to yourselves, how's it doing? Is it doing what we're hoping it ought to do? I came from West Valley orientation. I don't know what you all know about West Valley, but pretty much was bottom of the barrel kind of housing. Very, very basic homes throughout the community. And we kept getting that kind of stuff. And we said, you know, one day we need to do something a little better than these boxes showing up everywhere. So we added a design ordinance for single-family homes, and then we added one for multi-family homes, and then we added one for commercial buildings. Did all that based on a plan that said, hey, we got to do better than this. What we're getting here isn't really working, isn't great. So going out on a field trip, you know, take a look at what you're building, what's happening in your community. Is that what you think ought to be continuing? There could be good things about it. They're just happening, you know, but maybe you want to try and push those into the ordinance somewhere. There could be bad things that you want to see a way to prevent. And, you know, your plan can address those kinds of design items, all right? But you can implement that through your zoning ordinance. How many have a design ordinance in the county? Anything? Which county? Weaver. Yep, okay. I should have guessed. Anybody else? Okay, design. All right. What's the building going to look like? What's its form going to be? Okay, I'm going to give you a bunch of other things to think about. You realize that that zone that you put together in 1950 probably isn't going to really achieve what your vision says. Okay, so it's time to change it. Time to take a look at it. You're getting stuff showing up in these zones that you don't really think should be there. Time to look at it. I've never had this problem, but in Planning Commission, somehow you're having these really long meetings, lots of arguments, lots of stuff going on that, you know, it's something that the ordinance could address, but it doesn't. Okay? With Salt Lake County, in my Mill Creek Planning Commission, the day after the Planning Commission meeting, I send to the planning staff, the county administration guys, a little note says, hey, here's some things that happened last night. None of you guys were there, hardly. So, you know, here's some things that happened. These could be addressed with ordinance changes. Sure would be nice. And avoid half, you know, like meetings till 10 o'clock at night. Places where you got problem uses, things that are in there that you're just causing problems. What was that mention of home occupations? Personally didn't really think home occupations were a problem, but North Ogden, for example, that was one of our survey questions. Was, are you okay with welding shops, heavy equipment repair, and, I don't remember the other one. Oh, just regular auto repair in a single-family zone for home occupation. And you know, my way of thinking would be, if we have some criteria about what a home occupation ought to be looking like, it kind of eliminates some of those things, but they were in the midst of some big controversy, I guess, over those issues. So something's wrong with that zone. Other things, edges of zones. You know, you got big buildings right next to one-floor single-family home. Does that work? Often not. You're getting all kinds of complaints from your citizens, all right? The developers are complaining too. You know, they don't know where they're going. They've got community issues. And then my last one is just, hey, the zoning ordinance is a mess. Your process takes forever. You're not getting what you want, and you can't seem to get the enforcement that you want either. So, looking at your ordinance, how do you actually do things like that? You can make a lot of minor modifications. That's easy. Those are text changes, all right? And a text change is a legislative. Yes. It's working. Okay. You get through all those kinds of issues. And I just highlight some of this here because you can address all those things in your zoning ordinance. I know some people don't want to, some communities don't want to, but those are things you can do, and those can be big problems within your ordinance. The last one there, incentives. How do we get the developers to do the right thing? Okay, one way is to say, you shall do this. Another one is to say, hey, we'd really like to do this, and if you do that, then you get something in return. Some kind of incentive. Very popular way to address ordinance issues these days. Okay. Bigger changes to a zoning ordinance. Probably ought to go through the minor ones first, but when you get to the big ones, here's one that's pretty big. And I have heard attorneys suggest this for all communities in the state. They ought to go back and look at your permitted uses and your conditional uses in the zones. Are they the right ones? Okay. Are you ending up with conditional uses that you say to yourself, man, I really want to deny this? And what's the deal with conditional use? Can you really deny that? I heard a Okay. Why? What's going on? What kind of a use is a conditional use?
It's a permitted use of conditions.
So it's a different way of thinking. The 1950s ordinance said you could do that. You could deny a conditional use, but all the case law has changed that. At this point, it's more like if there are no conditions you can think of that could be set, maybe you could deny something. But if you can think of conditions that make this thing work, you don't really have a choice, okay? I mentioned that when I was in a planning commission meeting and had a lady just telling me, no, and just discussed with her, you know, could you just maybe help us, because we really can't just say no here. Tell us some conditions that you think would make this thing acceptable. And she gave us a list, which was great. That's probably the only time that ever worked. Anyway, so reviewing those, making sure you got the right ones there. Okay? And then the thought process of, is that zone the right zone? Has it got everything in it that we want to see in that particular area? And that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of thinking that needs to be done, almost like a vision for each of these zones. And you can do some of that with your subdivisions also. All right. Other things that are happening with zoning ordinances. Adding on a lot of things. I talked about design ordinances in West Valley. We did an awful lot of that. But you can address all of these different things and add those into your ordinance to try and achieve the kind of places, the kind of areas that your plan suggests. Anybody use a development agreement? Yep, a little bit. Okay, a couple. All right. That's another way sometimes. It's usually done with a zoning proposal. Okay, not at the conditional use level. It's a little harder to do that, but where you have more discretion in the zoning kind of a situation. Plan unit developments. Anybody got any of those? Sometimes called master plan communities. Plan residential unit developments. I've seen that one too. There's a lot of them out there. But that's another way with having some good standards within those. And there are a few communities out there that are doing different things too. They're actually going to design review committees. Okay, there's a separate committee set up within the community to actually look at design issues and make a recommendation to the planning commission. And very few around here, but some that have a town architect. Design committee of one. Okay. Overlays. Anybody have any overlays in their county? Yes, you do. Usually those are triggered by something, some kind of event, some kind of a desire by a developer. What would be the trigger in your area?
Flood zones, energy development, small businesses in the rural setting.
Okay, so anytime one of those shows up, it triggers the overlay. Okay? All right. Sometimes you just have to say to yourself, time to throw this zone out, okay, and start over. You just can't figure out how to fix something, and you just want to go look at some other examples out there, okay? That happens. There's another tool out there called form-based code. Anybody heard of that one? A couple people? Okay, all right. Kind of an emerging trend across the U.S. and here in Utah. There's actually a guide, a template that's been created on the Envision Utah site. Basically a step-by-step process to go through and create a form-based code. It's just as applicable to counties as it is a city. No difference there. That process that's in there is actually very good. So I'm just going to touch on that for a minute. There's one thing that seems to happen a lot with just zoning, you know, that the commercial zone that you have 10 miles over that way is just as good for the area over there that's 10 miles away over that way, okay? That's actually a philosophy that happens in Salt Lake County. The zoning for Mill Creek, if you're familiar with Mill Creek, is exactly the same zone content-wise as what you have in Magnet, what you have in Kearns, what you have in Copperton, all of those. They don't have anything different. And I just throw out the idea that those are different places. They have different circumstances. Why would it work to have just the same zone in every place? It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to do that either. But that's what commonly is done. One zone to bind them all. Oh, sorry. So there we go. So form-based codes are really intended to promote a vision for a particular area. Okay, not to be a generic kind of a thing. All right. It does promote more permitted uses. How about this as an incentive for a developer? Okay. Instead of everything being a conditional use, more permitted uses, because you said what that design is going to be like, that you want to see what those standards are. You get more comfortable with more things being permitted use. What do you think a developer says if he can get away with not going to a conditional use here? Great. Yeah. One of my favorite lines was, every time I go to a planning commission, all it does is cost me money. That's pretty blunt. That was a developer in West Valley. Anyhow, a thought though. If you can get enough standards in place, does everything need to be a conditional use? Good question. These really do look at what's the street going to be like, what that place is going to be looking like, and what's in there is really meant more for centers, but again, that process that's in there that looks at all kinds of different aspects of the built environment really is a good process and one worth considering. So I'm hoping there's some questions. Wrapping up. More balanced communities, more balanced counties, a good idea that may involve changing your zoning and changing your plans. Economic development. Would it be good economic development if you had more permitted uses than conditional uses? Might be. But it also might be that there's a challenge for those that are doing economic development in your county that is posed through a general plan process, asking them to help achieve what that plan is seeking. You might consider changing your operating procedures, and again, I think the plan can be used so well to help set general priorities, okay? And with that, there's another old picture. This is an action picture of planning, okay? See, it's like this. Sorry. Anyway, that's actually all I wanted to cover. I know I'm done a little early. Anybody got any questions they would like to ask about general plans for changing your zoning? Hopefully we can skip the legislative and the administrative questions. Okay, well, get to be ahead of schedule then. Thank you.